Good morning/afternoon/evening, everyone. Let me start with a simple truth. If your mind feels foggy, scattered, or overwhelmed, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your brain is giving you a signal, a biological signal, and when we understand those signals, not just suppress them, we can begin to clear the cobwebs from our thinking mind. So today, I want to share with you 6 science-backed principles that can dramatically improve your mental clarity, performance, and focus. No hacks, no fluff, just tools rooted in neuroscience and human behavior. When your mind feels cluttered, foggy, or scattered, it's easy to think something is wrong with you, that you're lazy, unmotivated, or just not trying hard enough. But mental clutter isn't a personal failure. It's a biological signal. Just like physical pain alerts you to injury, cognitive fog is your brain's way of signaling that something is out of balance internally. It's often a symptom of disrupted neural processes, too much stress, poor sleep, low-quality inputs, or even a lack of physical movement. Your brain operates on electrochemical signaling. Neurotransmitters like dopamine, acetylcholine, and norepinephrine guide your attention, motivation, and clarity. When these systems are dysregulated because of poor sleep, erratic routines, or constant overstimulation, your thinking becomes fuzzy, your decisions become reactive, and your focus gets fragmented. In these moments, it's tempting to push through, to double down on effort. But that's like trying to drive a car harder when the engine is overheating. What you actually need is to listen, to understand what your brain is asking for. Sometimes that's rest, sometimes it's stillness. Sometimes it's sunlight, movement, or breathing space. Clarity isn't about working harder, it's about aligning with how your brain truly functions. When you begin to see mental fog not as a personal defect but as a physiological cue, you unlock the ability to respond with intelligence instead of frustration. You stop fighting your mind and start helping it. That's when real clarity begins. Mental clutter doesn't appear out of nowhere. It builds up through a combination of lifestyle choices, environmental inputs, and neurological patterns. At the core, your brain is a prediction machine, constantly trying to process information, make decisions, and keep you safe. When too much input floods the system, emails, notifications, unfinished tasks, emotional stress, it begins to lose its ability to prioritize. The result isn't just feeling overwhelmed, it's a breakdown in the clarity of your thinking. This mental fog isn't just psychological, it's deeply rooted in biology. When you're under stress, your body releases cortisol, which over time disrupts the balance of neurotransmitters responsible for attention and focus. The prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain involved in decision-making and cognitive control, starts to lose its edge when stress becomes chronic. The brain shifts into a reactive mode, scanning for threats and distractions rather than engaging in deep, intentional thinking. What's important to understand is that this shift isn't random. Your brain is trying to protect you, but in doing so, it can become stuck in patterns that prioritize short-term survival over long-term clarity. You may find yourself jumping from task to task, avoiding silence, or constantly seeking stimulation, not because you lack willpower, but because your nervous system is overstimulated and under-recovered. Clearing mental clutter starts with recognizing these patterns not as personal weaknesses, but as signs that your internal systems need rebalancing. By acknowledging the biological roots of mental fog, you gain leverage. You can begin to take deliberate steps, restoring your circadian rhythm, reducing cognitive load, regulating your stress response. And when you do, your mind doesn't just feel quieter, it becomes a more reliable tool capable of focus, insight, and calm. Mental clutter is often mistaken for a lack of discipline or willpower, but at its core, it's a reflection of how your brain is functioning at a biological level. When you feel mentally foggy, unfocused, or indecisive, it's not because you're weak, it's because your brain is trying to operate under conditions that compromise its normal processing abilities. This state can result from excessive stress, chronic sleep deprivation, overstimulation from digital inputs, or even poor nutritional habits. Each of these factors disrupts the brain's chemical environment, creating noise in the system that blocks clarity. Your brain communicates through networks of neurons that rely on specific neurotransmitters to send signals efficiently. For example, acetylcholine is essential for sustained attention, while norepinephrine supports alertness and focus. When these chemicals are imbalanced, say, from being stuck in a cycle of high cortisol due to stress or low dopamine from burnout, the neural circuits responsible for focus and decision making start to misfire. You may find it difficult to stay on task, filter distractions, or even recall simple information. This fog isn't just an abstract feeling, it's the tangible effect of your nervous system being out of sync. In this state, your brain prioritizes short-term survival behavior, scrolling for stimulation, avoiding complex thinking, or constantly switching tasks to find relief. The problem compounds because the very behaviors we turn to for a quick mental escape, like checking our phones or multitasking, only deepen the clutter by reinforcing shallow attention patterns. Recognizing mental fog as a biological message rather than a character flaw is empowering. It shifts your mindset from blame to curiosity. What's causing this signal? Is it sleep debt? Is your nervous system overloaded? Are you caught in a cycle of reactive behavior with no real recovery? When you begin to ask these questions, you step into a place of control. You can start adjusting your environment, your habits, and your physiology to support mental clarity. And from there, your mind becomes more than just a container for thoughts. It becomes a clear, focused tool for intentional action. When your mind feels tangled, like thoughts are piling on top of each other without resolution, that's not just a mood or a mindset issue. It's a physiological condition. The brain doesn't generate clarity automatically. It depends on the health of specific neural networks, the balance of neurotransmitters, and the regulation of your autonomic nervous system. When any of these systems are off even slightly, your ability to think clearly, prioritize, and stay present becomes compromised. Mental clutter is often the result of your brain's input and output systems being overloaded or misaligned. Consider what happens during chronic overstimulation. Constant exposure to notifications, background noise, decision-making pressure, or multitasking taxes your attentional system. Over time, the neural circuits responsible for filtering important from irrelevant information become fatigued. Your working memory, which holds information in your mind temporarily so you can manipulate it, begins to buckle under pressure. You try to think, but the thoughts feel slippery, hard to hold, hard to connect. It's not because you lack intelligence, it's because your brain's processing power is being fragmented. Even something as simple as poor breathing or low physical movement can reduce oxygen delivery to the brain, creating a subtle, persistent sense of sluggishness. Combine that with high cortisol levels from stress and reduced sleep quality, and you've created a neurochemical environment that makes clarity feel out of reach. And yet, many people blame themselves for not trying hard enough, and not realizing their biology is working against them. The power comes in realizing that this clutter is your brain signaling a need, not for more information, more stimulation, or more effort, but for recalibration. That might mean stillness, deep rest, natural light, or time spent without screens. It might mean simplifying your to-do list so your prefrontal cortex can focus instead of firefight. By respecting these signals and responding with intention, you begin to clean out the noise, not just mentally, but neurologically. Clarity, then, is not something you chase. It's something you allow by creating the right internal conditions. Mental clutter often shows up as an inability to concentrate, an inner restlessness, or a feeling that your thoughts are jammed together like traffic in a congested city. It's easy to interpret this as laziness or a lack of discipline, but that's rarely the truth. What you're experiencing is the downstream effect of how your brain and body are currently functioning. When mental fog takes over, it's a biological indication that your internal systems are not being given what they need to operate efficiently. At the core of clear thinking is energy management. Your brain is only about 2% of your body's mass, but it consumes over 20% of your energy. That energy is allocated based on what the brain perceives as necessary for survival and task completion. When you're under stress or chronically fatigued, your brain begins rerouting that energy toward vigilance and basic functioning, reducing what's available for higher-order processes like focus, memory, and creative thinking. That's why under pressure, even simple decisions feel overwhelming. And it's not just mental stress. Nutritional deficiencies, poor hydration, lack of movement, and artificial light exposure at the wrong times all alter the brain's capacity to function optimally. These disruptions affect the production and balance of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which are essential for motivation and clarity. The result is a brain trying to operate with the brakes on, sluggish, fogged, and reactive. But here's the key insight. When you recognize that these symptoms are your biology speaking, not your identity breaking down, you begin to approach mental clutter with compassion and strategy. Instead of blaming yourself for not being on, you ask the right questions. Did I move today? Did I rest? Am I constantly seeking stimulation and skipping recovery? The moment you reframe mental fog as a biological feedback mechanism, you create space to intervene intelligently, with behavior, not just willpower. Clarity isn't a reward for grinding harder. It's a side effect of supporting your brain in the way it was designed to function. Mental clutter often becomes most apparent in moments that demand presence, when you're trying to listen, focus, or make a decision, and suddenly realize your mind is elsewhere, looping through unfinished tasks, background worries, or internal noise. That experience isn't random. It's a result of how your nervous system has been shaped by your environment, habits, and recent experiences. And the key to addressing it is to stop treating it as a personal failing and start seeing it as a real-time biological alert. Your brain is constantly scanning for relevance and threat. It tries to allocate attention based on what it believes matters most. But in a world of constant notifications, fragmented conversations, and non-stop mental input, the signal-to-noise ratio becomes distorted. Your attention system gets pulled in multiple directions, and rather than settling on one clear track of thought, your brain starts to juggle efficiently. The result is shallow focus, decision fatigue, and an ongoing sense of mental disarray. This disorganized state isn't just mental. It has measurable biological roots. High cortisol levels from ongoing stress reduce your brain's ability to regulate emotional responses and filter out distractions. Poor sleep impairs the glymphatic system, which helps clear waste from the brain at night, essentially leaving behind cognitive residue. Low levels of physical movement and time spent in artificial environments further dampen the natural neurological rhythms that support clarity and calm. All of this creates the conditions for fog, not focus. Understanding mental clutter as a biological signal gives you something powerful, permission to pause and reset instead of pushing blindly forward. It invites you to ask what your brain is missing: nutrients, movement, light, silence, and to respond with deliberate choices rather than frustration. The goal isn't to force your way through the fog, but to create the internal conditions where the fog lifts on its own. Because when the brain is supported, it doesn't just perform better, it thinks more clearly, more calmly, and more creatively. That's how you begin to clear the cobwebs from your thinking mind. So, let's bring this all together. Mental clutter is not a mystery, and it's certainly not a sign that you're broken. It's a message. biological signal from your brain and body that something needs to change. It could be a lack of rest, overstimulation, poor breathing, disrupted sleep, or simply too many inputs and not enough recovery. But when you begin to view this mental fog as feedback instead of failure, you reclaim your power. You stop trying to push through the fog with brute force and start clearing it with intelligence. Clarity is not accidental. It's earned through small, consistent choices, choosing deep rest over endless scrolling, choosing focused effort over fragmented multitasking, choosing sunlight, movement, and stillness over stimulation and noise. The tools are simple, but they are powerful when used with intention. Your brain is designed to function clearly. It wants to focus, to learn, to think deeply, but it can only do that when it's supported. So listen to the signals, respect the biology, and create the conditions where clarity isn't forced. It emerges.